Welcome to the Hermetic Astrology Podcast. I'm Gary Caton, and I'm here with Christa of Practical Astros. And welcome to the show, Christa.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. We had a conversation on your podcast recently, and as we were finishing up, I was thinking it would be cool to have a discussion on practical witchery,
Yeah.
kitchen witchery around the because it's Beltane. And so it's the middle decan of Taurus, um, that cross quarter point
hmm
on the wheel of the year, where everything is green again and springtime is fully in order. And it's sort of like the birthday. I think of the birthday of the goddess.
Yeah.
Um, there's also an idea that it's the wedding of the green man with the goddess,
hmm
that kind of thing. I
The
think that's
maple. Yeah, I think that's the
yeah.
maple symbolism.
Yeah, I think that's actually also why weddings used to occur in June, because you couldn't get married before the goddess, the god,
Oh,
and so they would get married on May 1st, and then all the peoples would get married in June.
yeah.
Juno being right. I think so. There's so much of
Sounds
that
right.
stuff. It's like, yeah, it sounds good.
If you just made it up, maybe you just like were transmitting something there for a second.
Yeah, maybe. I think I seem to have heard something like that once upon a time, but in honor of the goddess Gaia, the recent Earth Day, just I wanted to talk to people about, because a lot of people get, when I talk about astrological magic, a lot of people get a little bit and maybe even a lot sort of spooked by
Hmm.
the idea of, because they're like, oh, what if I don't do it right? What if it backfires? What if,
Yeah.
And I just feel like there's probably a lot of simple things that people can do that would really, it's like qualifies as astrological magic, but it would fall more tightly under the umbrella of like kitchen witchery, and it would be simple stuff that people, um, there was a lady the other day, and she had a problem with, I think she was trying to pass a test or something, and I just told her, just go to a crossroads, put some coins in a bag, go to a crossroads and say a prayer to Mercury and just leave the coins there. I mean, just simple stuff that people,
Yeah.
I mean, that's magic, but I don't think that kind of thing is scary to anybody, right?
Yeah.
You're just saying prayers and giving offerings. And so I just wanted to talk about stuff like that, that people can do, that's like maybe, I don't know, a way to ease themselves into the astrological magic practice and stuff.
hmm Yeah, I think that meeting people wherever they're at is kind of like where I like to come from,
Yes.
and even just astrology in itself. Like I've had this recent thing where I'll offer a gift certificate, and somebody that has had a reading will buy it for a loved one, and so many times that loved one, they didn't ask for that,
Right.
and so they never show up. And so it's been
Wow.
this thing of like, should I not offer gift certificates, or should I just say, if the person you give it to doesn't use it in 3 months, then it becomes your reading, so then you get a reading in 3 months because they value it.
Yeah.
But so through that, I've kind of dug around of like, why do people not? One, I think that there's an invitation, like if you feel invited to go to an astrological reading, there's some sort of like magical exchange there. And if someone just hands you an invitation, you're supposed to show up, there's a little bit of fear that's wrapped up with some people in it.
Yeah.
And the last couple of people that didn't show up for a gift certificate reading, and I just passed it back to the gifter, they gave the gifter a feedback of like, I don't want to know, I don't want to go to an astrologer. I don't There's like a little bit of fear in it. And for for us that are like in the world, it's like, well, I don't think that you have to be afraid, and you don't have to find out things that you don't want to know about. You can
Right.
just explore it, or just look back, or look around you, or you don't have to look within, even though I would encourage you to.
Right.
But so that came for like thinking about astrology in itself can feel like a threshold that some people
Yeah,
aren't
I've had
ready
the
to
same experience. In fact, I mean, almost invariably, and when they do show up, it's awkward as heck because
Mhm.
they don't feel comfortable. They're just doing it to please their loved one.
The
They're
obligation.
not invested, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
yep, yep, yep. So, and in counseling, I remember very early on, the admonition is to start where the client is, you
Mhm.
know, because and that sounds so simple, but well-meaning people, of course, have a high um ideal of what they want healing, they want this, they want to bring the client from where they are to wherever they think they could or should be.
Right.
And so they'll start there more towards the ideal instead of just saying, hey, I'm going to start right here in the trenches with you, right where you're at.
Yeah.
Tell me what's going on. Let me let me really, check back with you and reflect what you're saying, make sure I understand exactly where you are. We'll talk about how and where that shows up in the chart, and then we can talk about where would you like to go from here,
Right.
you
Exactly.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's
so
not your reading as the astrologer. It's not you trying to like
yeah,
show
and it
off, like, look at all these techniques I can
well, that
confuse you
too,
with.
yeah. I mean, I always had a lot of fun when people would show up and I'd say, is there anything in particular you want to look at? And they're like, no, I just get a reading from a different astrologer every year and I just want to see what you're all about. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we could do
Yeah.
that. It's
Yeah,
kind of like, you're
I
gonna
did
pay me
that.
for this? Okay.
Yeah. I did that for a whole year when right before I kind of I was coming back into the astrology world, and I was getting only so far with the books that I had bought, and I was like, I'm just gonna go to a different astrologer instead of like paying for a school because I wasn't really sure what school to go to. There's so many choices.
Yep.
Like I'm just gonna go, and I know my chart, and I would find astrologers that I kind of like their vibe or had a recommendation, and I would just get my own chart reading. And
Yep.
I would always come with a question because as astrologers we like questions. We like to have some sort of the invitation of for us to be like, what door should I walk through in this chart?
Hmm.
But I just got readings about my own chart from a bunch of different astrologers just to see different styles, and the alchemy between people changes whenever you, like with anything, right? So I would have different readings just on that alone. Even if they gave me the quote same reading, it was quite different because
Oh
my
yeah. Oh
energy with
yeah.
you versus my energy with another astrologer is just different. And so
Hmm.
different things come through the chart.
Yep.
But so with astrology in itself, I kind of recognize is like it's a magical conversation to begin with.
Yes.
And so if people are already interested in astrology, I feel like you can kind of give them the next stepping stone in that kind of foggy path of like, well, have you just tried to look at the moon? Because the moon is very familiar and friendly. And even if you stayed on that stepping stone for the rest of your life, you're going to have a magical life.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
you don't have to
That's
keep.
an incredible thing. I mean, you can just follow the new moon and the full moon every month, and we'll look
Yeah,
at the houses. And I mean, there's a new moon, and then 6 months later, there's a full moon in that same house. So you like plant seeds, harvest crops.
yeah,
Yeah, if you did nothing else but that for the rest of your life, like that would be such a great gift. I
yeah,
say the same thing to my beginning students. I always tell them when we're studying the elements, I'm like, don't ever feel like you're regressing if you go back to basics and just focus on the elements because you could literally do an entire astrology practice, like a
yeah,
professional practice, focusing just on the elements. I'm quite sure of it, and
yeah,
have a very rewarding experience with hundreds, thousands of people for decades.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
how profound they are.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it's like using symbolic language. It's almost like the more parameters you can give yourself, especially in the beginning, the better it teaches you to think symbolically instead of getting lost in the data and all of the rabbit holes because astrology is endless. It is
yeah.
limitless.
Yes.
So putting limits on it really helps kind of if you imagine like you have this like rushing river of knowledge and you're trying to consume it. Like the best way to do is to put some boundaries of rocks. Yeah, it's just like
I'm getting a picture.
fire hose in the mouth. Yeah. if you like built a small little pool with rocks to hold it and put
Mm,
parameters on it, and then there's some stillness to that knowledge, and
mm,
then you can get some reflection of your own from
mhm,
what you have, what the parameters you built, and then you
mm.
can knock it down and make a different shape with the same rocks, the same elements, or just the lunations. I mean, it's I feel like whatever, so many ways I feel like humans and crows have a lot in common. Like whatever's shiniest, we're going to be drawn there. And
Wow. Right.
so like I think of that like this is shiny to me right now. There's something is getting my attention to go look at this.
Hmm.
So I'm going to go over here and study it. I'm going to go over here and be curious about it because I don't know why I'm being drawn over there, but for the same reason, I don't know why there's a roll of duct tape on my counter and I feel like I'm going to need that today. And I grab it and put it in my car. And sure enough, somebody needs duct tape. It always happens. It's like if I see this random thing and like, why do I think I'm going to need that? I always need it. So
Mm.
it's like, just, I don't know why something is
And that's
shiny.
very lunar. That's very like that's the unconscious speaking
Mm,
to you, right?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So to get back on the sort of theme of Beltane and kitchen witchery, I mean, it's the same way with whether it's duct tape or like plants,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's certain plants that we're drawn to. There's certain plants that we've always been drawn to. I mean, my mother, when I was growing up, she grew iris
Mm,
flowers, and I drew I took and made a drawing of one, and then I transferred that drawing on like a board. I painted it up and I put it out on the highway because we lived right on a main road.
hmm.
And I mean, she got so much business from that. And I felt so proud because I got to help her with something she loved. And,
Yeah.
and it was really cool. And so, I've always had iris everywhere I go. And then, later when I got into astrology and stuff, I found out that iris are sacred to Athena
Mm,
because they like iron.
huh.
And guess where you find a lot of iron? On old battlefields, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, and Athena being the goddess of war, goddess of like strategic war. Yeah, it's a natural. And of course, I have my moon conjunct Athena.
Mm,
And so it's like, there you go. I mean,
yeah.
it's really yeah. And so, um, and that so that kind of thing of just like um looking at so you can go either way. You can like look at your natural affinities. There's certain plants that just through life or whatever, however, just natural, you've just had a natural affinity with.
Hmm.
And you can look at that and begin to make like the planetary or mythic associations with that plant
Hmm.
and then explore that. And okay, so how does that show up in my chart? And you can do it the other way around too, which would be like, for me, I might start with like the Almutin of the figure, which is a little bit of a complex subject. So you could just go with like, your sect light, whether that be the sun or the moon, if you're born in a daytime or nighttime chart, and just look at like um, the ruler of that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like for me, I'm born at night. Virgo moon, so that's going to be Mercury, and that's
Yeah.
also the reason why it's the mutant of the figure. But that's, but
That's another fine.
because Virgo has like two rulerships. It has Mercury is domicile ruler and exaltation ruler, so you get a lot of points in the scoring for having Virgo placements. Mercury gets a lot of points.
Yeah.
So like Mercury plants like mint. I mean, I love mint, and mint is like this prolific plant. It's easy to grow.
Yeah. It wants to grow.
It oh my God, it is like, and it just goes crazy, and you get this hedge of mint, and mint is actually very protective.
Mm,
Like for instance, last year I had a situation where I left my hunting clothes sitting out on the front porch because I don't like to bring them inside and get them stinky with like indoor smells.
hmm.
And then I didn't take them from there and put them in the shed. I just left them and I was not paying attention. And some yellow jackets got up under there and made a nest.
Hmm.
And I went to pick them up one day, and all of a sudden, yellow jackets was coming everywhere. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, what can I do that's not a chemical, repellent to
Hmm.
get these things. And I was looking it up, and it's like, you know, mint is a natural insect repellent.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I just happen to have a whole lot of mint over here. So I just cut, you know, like a boughs of mint and just like threw it on top of that stuff. And like eventually they kind of, you know, dispersed
Yeah. Yeah.
and whatnot.
Well, and it's a vasodilator, so it like opens you up. But like it's such a mercurial thing because it just opens up. Like for headaches, just putting mint oil on the
Mint
temples just
oil
really,
on your temples
yeah.
or hot mint tea.
Hmm.
Yeah, I enjoy mint tea quite a bit. It's refreshing. You
Yeah.
know, it kind of perks you up a little bit.
Hmm.
It's, without the caffeine, you know, if you're trying to watch your caffeine intake, if you've
Yeah.
already had 2 cups of coffee and you want that little pick me up, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I would follow that and be like, whatever grows around you, usually you have like a plant that will find its way to you throughout life, and just learning what those plants are. So I did this little kind of in-class workshop with some other students, and it was basically like the correspondences between herbalism and astrology. And the shiniest thing from that was the idea of a grimoire or a book of spells.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of what I wanted to share with you because it's an easy, accessible thing for most people to do if they want to have some sort of relationship. Write that shit down. I mean, that's
Almost
really,
like a magical diary, right?
yeah, pretty much. Like, and it is yours. Like, it doesn't have to be, there's not a prescription for magic. Like, there might be things that are in order, but don't, I would say you have permission to create your own magic in whatever order you want to put it in.
Mm.
I mean, there are rules that people have written down, and I'll tell you that half of those rules are lies. So, that's why I just do
Yeah.
it, do it yourself. But it starts with just developing that relationship. And so having just a notebook or a collection of papers or something that is bound together,
Hmm.
is the binding in itself is what is going to connect you to it. And it's just writing down, oh, I have writing down your memories of plants is a great way to start. What plants do you think of when someone's like, tell me all your memories of plants, and starting to write that down, those plants will come up.
Yeah.
And then you start to document what plants you like to grow, what plants that you're drawn to, those shiny things. Then you can look at that and then explore the astrological association and see where you find it in your natal chart, because if you're already familiar with astrology, the plant garden will then come up. And I've even planted my natal chart in a circle as like a medicine wheel with the plants that
I
correspond with
did that too.
the.
We just moved into a new place in 22, and along the front walk there's like a brick walk, and then there's like 2 rows of like a beds that
Yeah.
that mirror the walk. And you know, my the two, and it faces east, so it faces the sunrise, which I
Hmm.
love.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was thinking about it. I was like, you know, the 2 oriental planets in my chart, they're like Doraphori spear bearers of the sun,
Mm.
are Mercury and Venus. So it's like I'll plant Mercury and Venus plants along the walk, you know,
Yeah.
so, like to honor my chart. And so
Yeah.
um, so like, okay. So I was thinking about it. I was like, for Mercury, like lavender, you
Hmm.
know, because you can just clip it and make sachets and put under your pillow. It smells great. There's some, you
Yeah.
know, it's beautiful. It smells great. And then I was thinking about Venus, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do yarrow because it's easy to grow, and it's beautiful, and it smells great. All the same reasons. And so I was at the there's a there's a farm up here actually that grows lavender locally, and that's the best way to get any, because
Yeah.
it's already been adapted to your local
Yeah.
climate and
Yeah.
everything.
Environment. Yeah.
And so I asked her, and she had some yarrow plants too. So I got those and planted them along the walk. And then I was out walking in the field, and like, just it's like when you get a new kind of car and then you see that car everywhere. Right. So I was out there walking in the field, and after I had like a really good picture of what a yarrow leaf looks like, and
Just
I
so you.
started looking around. I was like, oh my God, there's yarrow everywhere in my
Yeah.
field,
Yeah.
you know. And of course, it's because Venus is like my, you know, planet that introduced me to astrology through a
Yeah.
dream along. So of course, like, it's literally like Venus plants followed me
Mm-hmm.
and here I am, and not even knowing that, and then planting Venus plants. I could have just gone out in the field and taken a few cuttings and planted the plants from my field,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all good. I mean, it's kind of neat the way it turned out anyways,
Yeah.
getting those. Um, but yeah, that kind of thing where, and then, you can like watch each year and like see, like it was really interesting to me. I mean, when, when the fall comes and the plant starts to die back, you feel a little bit like, oh, it starts to get,
Mm.
I remember when those beautiful white blossoms, and they're so fragrant, and then they just go black.
Mm.
When they're done, they're done.
Yeah.
I mean, they just go black, and it's like, oh. And then at the end, and then in the fall, like all the leaves and everything withers like back, and you just have this like
The
dead,
bones.
dry, yeah. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, if and you're just like hoping, all winter long, is it going to come back, and then in the spring when you get these green shoots coming up through all that brown dead stuff. I mean, that's alchemy.
Yeah.
Like the the decay, like the breakdown, the negretto, right? And then the
Mm-hmm.
albedo, the burst of new energy, right? And then the rubedo is the flowering. I mean,
Yeah.
that is the cycle of alchemy. And so just by like journaling around that, like, oh, the yarrow's bursting through and screen again, and just
Mm-hmm.
noting that in there, and like and then over the years you can sort of notice like, oh wow, it's a little early this year,
Mm-hmm.
or it's a little later, or like when the yarrow was coming up this year, I had this or that experience, and it kind of, those two things sort of, bounce off of each other. It's,
Yeah.
to me, it's like having um a personal red book journey, because
Yeah. That's
like,
what it is. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a astrologically magically adapted red book journey, right? And
Totally. Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
draw in there, and I mean, it doesn't even matter if you're, I mean, Carl Jung was like incredibly smart, and he is also an incredible artist.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, how the hell is he good at so many things? But
Well,
um
there is like this, and I would suggest not typing it into a computer, but actually writing it down on paper, because the earthly incarnate connection of that, whether it's pencil or pen onto a physical paper, I feel like is important, because
yeah,
it's relating to the energetics of Earth.
yeah.
It's like, not that computers aren't of Earth also, but there's something that is, it's like the pace that when you walk on foot is like the truest pace for us as humans. That's what we're capable of. Even like a bicycle is kind of false pace, because we're using the elements of something else to move us forward. Like there's such, like, that's why I feel like there's such magic just in walking, because it's like, this is
Hmm.
my capacity, these are my rhythms, I'm walking with my whole body
Do you know how
functioning at once.
what that speed is?
What?
Walking pace.
Mm-mm.
It's about 3 mile an hour,
Yeah.
20 minutes a mile. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty good pace. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's like a walking
Three
version.
mile. Can you imagine, like, when mentally you go, whoa, holy shit, I'm gonna go through life at 3 miles an hour. Yeah, that's
But
where we
that's
were
what,
at for the longest time.
yeah. So like,
Poor
even
horses.
like, so I just feel like even writing down is like, the pace is probably 3 miles an hour that we can write, because we have to take time. And there's like this magic of Mercury flowing through us onto the paper.
Hmm.
It's different than typing it on the computer, and you can do that anywhere. You don't have to have anything except some sort of writing implement.
Yeah,
You don't have to have Wi-Fi. You don't have to have,
right.
you're not distracted. It's like making your own grimoire. It's just, grimoire just means book of spells, and it's spells because you're just spelling it out. So it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be what you think an incantation is. It's just you documenting that, the moon is in Aquarius, and these are the plants that I decided to visit today, or the, like, I realized that I thought all this was red clover, and there was a white flower that popped up. Like, where did that come from? I
Yeah,
mean, and so to
the
get to
process of discovery. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And through that, I feel like you're not, I mean, I get freaked out by plants. I still have this little like surprise of like they're paying way more attention than I gave them credit for yesterday. And
Mm,
so there'll be that, it's not fear, it's like a little bit of just the veneer is taken off. And I have those moments of like reality is very cold and crystalline. And so if you're concerned or you're fearful or you're reticent about doing magic, it's like just documenting your own observations, then you can find the ways to engage with it. I mean, just literally talking to the trees that are in your yard
oh
is
my
like
God,
a
dude.
great,
Somebody
it's
yesterday was,
so,
yeah. I mean, I've got these cherry trees that line my driveway.
mhm,
And the first year we were here, it was like the guy told me, he's like, yeah, they're incredible in the springtime. And I was really looking forward to it because springtime is my time, man. I'm
yeah,
Aries. I love that stuff. And the first year it was like, there was some bloom on them, but there was more green than bloom. And I was like, wow, like that's not exactly what I was expecting. It's like, okay, well, and then this year, oh my goodness, like just like this extremely prolific burst of pink blossoms to the point
mhm,
where it's like when the wind would blow, it was like raining, and I'm like follow the pink brick road, like my whole
yeah,
driveway is like pink, and it's like, oh my goodness. Um, and so I'm out there hugging them and thanking them, telling them how beautiful they are.
yeah,
I'm imagining, and it's right out by the road too. So I'm imagining my neighbors or somebody in the car going, "Look at that dumbass
you're
hugging that tree."
literally a tree hugger across the road.
And that's exactly what they would say out in the
Yeah,
country. I literally seen a tree hugger today.
and I'd always heard about them, I'd never seen one in my life.
Oh my goodness, man. Um, yeah, and the other thing that I was gonna say, like my Virgo is just wants to speak up here. Like one thing, like so this idea of a grimoire, it's like it has this sort of sacred quality to it. So if you one way that I get around, like, I don't want to just scratch down, like, sort of in a messy way. I don't like it to be messy because it's sacred. So I want
Mhm,
it to be clean. So a lot of times, if I'm just quickly scratching down some thoughts, I'll just scratch it down on whatever spare paper. And
for
this
sure.
is how Carl Jung worked as well. He had, I think the black books are actually like his raw thoughts. And then he went back
Oh,
down and like condensed and edited them and put them in the red. The red book was like the final version that he
mhm,
wanted to hold everything, like the finished version.
mhm.
Then he had like the messy version over here, and then he would put it in the final one. So you can do it kind of that way too. I don't know. You
Yeah.
don't have
Yeah, I
to.
mean, that's I feel like that's just a good way in general because when you're just scratching it down, you're like, this is the raw thought as it
Oh my
comes
God,
out.
it's so
So I'm
there's
not
so
going to
many
edit it or I'm not going to self-censor. I'm just going to put it out there.
there's
And then
so many
after it
stories. Yeah.
sets, then
Of
I can
like,
then I can curate it in a more intentional way. So you get both, you get
wow.
both the restriction and the freedom.
Wow. Yeah, there's so many stories of like famous artists like scratching down some lyrics on a napkin while they
Hmm.
were having lunch with their friends, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and that immediacy of like just capturing the thoughts and the feelings, that's really important because I'll just forget. And then it's like a dream, really.
Yeah.
That's I mean, that's such a good metaphor because like, you know how you have to record a dream right after you wake up so you don't forget it? Think about it. It's the same way with these inspirations. If we don't get it down, it slips away. And so it's like that, how much more evidence do you need to see that that is also a dream? It's the
Hmm.
same way, the
Yeah.
same phenomena, it's also a dream.
I
And
heard this story like Tom Waits was in like LA traffic in his car and it was like before cell phones and he heard this song kind of coming through to him like this melody and lyrics or whatever coming through and he was getting really frustrated because he couldn't like he didn't have anything to write it down with and he didn't we had no way to like record it and he like said out loud like can't you see I'm busy like can you just come back later or just go bother someone else like why is the
oh my
inspiration coming
goodness.
now like what do you can you see that I can't handle you right now and I love that
Wow.
idea of like capturing the tail of that inspiration so you can pull it down closer to you But also just recognizing that it comes through. I think like the inspiration winds will come back to you if you recognize that they're there to begin with.
Yeah, it's true. They do. Yeah. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, you can maybe not exactly in the same form, but if it, especially if it's important,
Hmm.
that's kind of the thing that I've noticed. Excuse me one second. Um, I thought my phone was going to go off there. Um, that's another thing that I've noticed is like the unconscious will speak to you kind of gently at first
Mm.
and like in whispers, be like, "Hey, what about this?" And you just be like, "Ah, whatever," or you're not even paying attention, and then it'll speak a little louder,
Yeah.
and it will get louder and more insistent until you're paying attention. And so when stuff shows up that's like messy and difficult, it's like, if you was paying attention, it probably wouldn't have had to have been like
Hmm. Yeah.
that. And so, yeah, if you get in that situation where it's coming through, it's like, okay, like just acknowledging, I hear you loud and clear, right? But like, I'm
Yeah,
driving.
not the
So
time.
like, please, like rain check, please, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we will do this again, and that's
Yeah.
probably enough to, because that's what it wants. It's like, this idea that the unconscious, in for Jung, it was like, the deepest part of our unconscious was of the opposite gender to our um I don't really know where Jung would stand. I'm not going to even speculate on where he would stand vis-a-vis like the current gender situation, but
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure for him it was the opposite gender to your birth
Yeah.
gender. Now, whether it would be the opposite to your um self-chosen identified gender, I don't know, but
Yeah.
um
It seems
there's
like it
this.
was the idea of it just being the foil.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's that it was, yes, exactly. So, you know, so it could, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be the opposite gender to be a foil either, I don't think.
Yeah.
You know
It's
what I'm
like
saying? It
it
would
just
be
to
the
create
opposite.
that tension of reflection
Yeah,
and that binary of 2 points to create
yes.
some
It
sort of
would be some
exchange.
kind of opposite. It wouldn't necessarily have to be opposite in gender, I don't think.
Yeah.
But the idea that it's a relationship, and that what does anyone want in a relationship? They want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be acknowledged, and they want to, they want to unify with you.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. And
Yeah.
without that, there's really no relationship. So when you just acknowledge and say, I hear you, I want to do this, I just can't do it now. That's
Yeah.
probably enough. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Well, and even just so the way to develop that, I mean, you know, we talk about intuition as kind of like this invisible thing, that it's like really hard to grasp, and it's like trust your gut. It's in our lore, it's in our vernacular. Trust your gut, like
Yes.
listen to your
Instincts.
intuition. When you don't listen to your intuition, like you forget, you choose not to take the duct tape and you need it, and it's like this personal hit of like I should have listened to that. I think that a lot of people really consciously avoid listening to that, and that leads them down some very blind roads.
Mm,
Um, but learning astrology and thinking about and having that language of correspondences, because you look at something, I mean, like as an astrologer, sometimes it's hard to take your astrology hat off or your astrology lens off, and you see everything and you're like Saturn, Mars, Mercury, Sun, like you see it everywhere, and you're not
yes.
necessarily saying it out loud, but it's like you look at people and their placements enough where you're like, oh, like I know exactly what I'm seeing now. But you don't have to, it's kind of effortless to do it, even if it is a little annoying or you want to kind of take the glasses off sometimes. Astrology and herbalism have that same way where you see things, you see that there's the idea of the doctrine of signatures, that it's like the plant expresses itself in ways that it can teach us, like
Yes.
a lot of the psychotropics have the same thing. I mean, like it's like the energy of the plant, like peyote presents its image to every person that consumes it. It's like, this is me. This is the spirit of peyote is this is what I look like.
Mm,
Nutmeg is the same way. I mean, like you have you have these signatures that the plants show either when you consume them or just see them. And when you have relationships with plants, you start to see, you have plant lenses that you wear too. You see
Mm,
something and you kind of want to invite chamomile and nettle to the story, because it's like it's effortless thought, because you've kind of you've learned the stories enough of those plants to kind of have it be integral into the
mm,
language that you use with any situation.
yeah.
It's like it's the energy that you're consuming the knowledge or the experience or the sensory capacity of those
Yeah,
plants, and it's
literally
into growing.
the medicine. Yeah.
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 And so it's going to come out of you too. And so if people are interested in, astrological magic particularly, I think it's just, it is just that alchemy of having relationship with plants, whether it's just making mint tea to, get rid of a headache. Like that is in a very basic and pure sense, herbal magic. It's like you've harvested something that has grown out of the ground. You have cut it up and poured hot water on it, changing the alchemy of it, and you're consuming it, and it's affecting your
Yeah.
body and your spirit. like like congratulations, you are now a witch. Like
Right? I
that's all
mean,
it
that's all it takes. Yeah, that's all it takes. And just my Virgo just keeps coming back here, so forgive me if it's a little bit annoying, but
I've got 3 Virgo
if
placements.
you so so
Yeah.
so yeah, if you can't harvest it, let's say it's wintertime and you don't have the fresh herb,
Mm,
so there's a few things you want to remember, like in the morning when the energies are still rising,
mm,
you want to harvest your fresh herbs, and then you just tie a little string around them and hang them upside down, so the essential oils, rather than like if you were to keep them right side up, the essential oils and the
mm.
would dissipate. So you hang them upside down, and I mean, I just have them hanging right on the rack with my pots and stuff,
Yeah.
like they just hang them upside down, and they're right there in the kitchen,
Hmm.
and you just grab a hunk of leaves off of there and put it in the ball and have some tea, and it's
Yeah.
really simple stuff that you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like lemon balm. Let me tell you something, lemon balm, Melissa,
I love lemon balm.
to the alchemist, that is like really potent medicine. It's like
Yeah.
Jupiter, so it's the greater benefic. So of
Yeah.
course, um, but there's so many things you can do. You can infuse them into honey. Like, have you ever had honey infused with lemon balm?
I think I have now.
Oh, so good.
I do have a
Um,
ton of lemon balm growing, so I'm gonna do that.
that's awesome, dude. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and what's the other thing I was thinking about saying? Yeah, it's flew out of my head at the moment, but yeah, so oh, yeah, and then like if you want to get a little bit more advanced, and this is something I did, and it opened up, like before I was the Mercury man, I was like
Yes.
Venus devotee, right? And so one of the ways that I became the Mercury man is I was writing horoscopes,
Mm.
and just for extra money, because I mean, when you first start trying to be a professional astrologer full time, you got to hustle, or at least back then I did.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And so I was writing horoscopes, I was doing this and that, and then it's some like, for me, like repetitive work, it's like torture.
Mm.
And so like writing the horoscopes, it was like, oh my God. And I would get writer's block because I didn't want to do it, but I had to do it.
Yeah.
And I would be literally be sitting there, and it was like the blank page was staring at me, and I was like, this is torture. I got to do something.
Yeah.
So I was like, I know, I'll just do like a Mercury tincture. I'll do a tincture of a Mercury herb, and then I'll take that, and it'll cure my writer's block, right? So she's laughing because she's like, yeah.
That'll work.
Oh, it did. It did. It worked so good, it got me fired.
Ah.
Well, no, I didn't get fired. I just didn't my contract wasn't renewed,
Mm.
because what happened was I got so creative that my editor could not follow me anymore. She didn't know
Mm.
what I was doing. And she literally, I told her, look, I'm going to be out of the country. I was doing a talk over in England, And I told her I'm going to be out of the country, so like, try to get this, let's get this editing done before whatever. Of course, that didn't happen. So I get this email while I'm out of the country saying, Gary, are you sure you wrote for the right month? And my first thought was like, oh my God, did I? And then I thought, dude,
Yeah.
Virgo moon, there's zero chance I wrote for the wrong month. Like
Yeah.
that stuff did not happen.
Yeah.
And so I went back and I looked and I was like, my God, it's crystal clear. And I told her what I was doing. Basically, I was using like derived houses,
Mm-hmm.
which, like, for instance, the third house is the eighth house from the eighth house.
Mm.
So that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, like the occult sort of uh, stuff that goes along with third house, right? I mean, the third house being like short journeys, like you can go on a whole like occult trip just walking down the road a half a mile. There, if you're paying attention, there could be all kinds of symbols and omens and all kinds of wild occult stuff because there's this eighth house connection, eighth from the eighth.
Huh. Yeah.
And she was like, basically, she said, that's too advanced. Our readers won't get it. You can't do that. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, it's you don't get it, so
Right.
I can't do it. Right. I
Yeah.
think the readers,
I am all readers. Yeah.
yeah, right, right. And so, but eventually I ended up writing a book for Mercury. So it was like, I think that tincture worked a lot better than I think it
Yeah.
did. And the other thing is, because I didn't get my contract renewed as a horoscope writer, I had an opening that where I had some extra time. And this other job came that and it paid more money and it
Mm.
was more interesting. And it's actually, guess what? It was. It's for a celestial planting calendar,
Ah.
biodynamic
Uh-huh.
agriculture. So it was literally like I took plant medicine and the plant said, You don't have a writer's block problem. You have a job you don't like problem.
Right. Quite different. Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
me give you a job you're actually going to like. And of course, the plant gave me a plant job,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? I mean, and it's like that simple act of just like needing something to like just get through the day or get through the week. Well, in this case, the month. I mean, they were due every month
Mm-hmm.
just to get through the month and just by the seat of my pants going, just I got to do something here. Let me do a tincture of
Yeah.
a mercury herb, and it had such profound effects. And here's why I think why, if we think about like philosophically what was happening there. So when you take so modern medicine like pharmaceutical drugs, they are made from a place of separation consciousness. In other
Mm.
words, those people do not, will not, cannot believe that the universe is anything but, like, for instance, the fact that an eclipse happens because the sun and the moon are exactly the same size in our sky,
Mm.
total coincidence, accident, random, like
Right.
really cool, but like no meaning.
Right. No soul.
Dude, I just want to smack them when they say that kind of. I just want to be like, wake up, man. But so when you make medicine from that point of view, what do you get? You get a laundry list of side effects at the end because it's separation consciousness
Disconnection. Yeah.
so it's kind of like I remember one of the things I remember. I mean, talk about a transcendentalist and a nature lover. Henry David Thoreau. And his Walden was a grimoire.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It was.
Yeah.
and so one of the things I remember him saying is like, there are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to every one who is striking at the root.
Hmm.
And it's like that's what pharmaceutical medicine reminds me of. It's hacking at the branches at it's
Yeah.
not getting at the root, right? It's just like, so you have to take these SSRIs every day because you have depression. It's like, well, the root of the depression is probably that you aren't active enough,
Mm.
that, there's a lot of things that go deeper than just your mood level, you
Well, it's
know?
also there's not participation from the person
Yeah. Oh, just take a pill and you'll be
Yeah,
better, right? I
right,
mean,
yeah. And,
and
and I speak as someone, like, I have congestive heart failure and I am on pharmaceuticals, like pharmaceuticals,
well, they have their place. They can save
like
lives.
they,
Yeah.
but I am also a participant in my own health. And so, I take pharmaceuticals so that the size of my heart doesn't continue to get bigger because I had this lifelong, illness that kind of showed up. And honestly, my heart disease brought me to lucid dreaming, which brought me back to herbal magic, which brought me to astrology. So I mean, like, in so many ways,
Wow.
like my
The
my
gift.
my heart, like my heart failure, and I had an OBE in the hospital. And when I came back, I was like, I'm here. And I'm here for, I mean, I love that I have heart disease because it was the catalyst for getting back into so many things
Wow.
that I wanted to stay here for.
Hmm.
Um, but the idea of, if you take just a pill and you think that that's all you have to do, then you are not engaging in your world, and
Right.
you're not engaging in your own, like, experience in life. And so
Right.
herbal medicine is a great way to, like, actually engage, because it's messy and it's seasonal. It's not always convenient, and it can a lot of times prick you and give you, like I use nettle all the time. Nettle is painful.
Yeah.
Nettle, like, requires blood. Nettle is that Mars.
Right.
Nettle is like it requires that. And so, but it's also, it gives that soul to engage with um,
Mm.
your own bodily experience. That I think that,
How do you
pharmaceutical
how do you
medicines
prepare?
isolated are just, it does teach and reiterate a disconnecting engagement with your life.
Yeah. So I think so just to briefly recap what I was saying, like when you make medicine from a holistic perspective, the side
Mhm.
effects are holistic.
Right.
Make
Yep.
medicine from separation consciousness, the side effects are separation consciousness. So, the side effects I had were like, yeah, I didn't get to keep that job because that job wasn't the right job for me. Like,
Hmm.
you know, I'm glad I did it. Like horoscope writing, I think is something that every astrologer should do, actually. Because it's a really good practice. It gets you thinking in certain ways. It gets you connected with the reality of your average Joe or Jane.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good things about it, but for me, you know, like
You
working
were
on the
done.
celestial plan, yeah, working on the celestial planning calendar is way more cool, kind of work, but yeah, I guess the other thing I was going to say is like, yeah, like, um, it's yeah, it like just like saying, oh, I can just take a pill and that's all I have to do. Like my thinking was kind of similar. Like all I have to do is take this tincture and it'll solve my problem, and that's all it'll do. And it's like,
Right.
no, when you invite that plant into your life, the plant's going to say, okay, I'll help you with that. But guess what?
And
You and yeah, you gonna
yeah,
take care. We got some other business to take care of over here, and that's
yeah.
that's the way it is. You're inviting the consciousness of another being into your to interplay with yours.
Hmm. Well, that's
So
why it cracked me up when you're like, I took a Mercury tincture, and I was like, yeah, what else? He's a trickster for a reason. What else?
I saw you immediately. You got this big smile on your face. You're like, yeah, there's a story here.
Yes. Famous last words. I took a Mercury tincture, and
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And everything changed. I mean, you know, um, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really simple things you can do. And then, as for me, like I'm always trying to go the next level. And so I've even gotten to the point, and it's um it's fairly advanced in terms of the technique. It's distillation.
Mhm.
But it's not that hard. I mean, I got a little pot still from Amazon for like $100. You stick it on your stove. You put some water in there, distilled water. Well, I actually use like
Spring
uh
water.
well, no, I use the water that's like from the fog that like
Yeah.
and what happens is it's
Is
so
that
foggy
still?
here. It'll actually I'll take and put a bucket under my downspout
Hmm.
and the fog hits the roof and it's so thick it condenses and goes in my gutters and then goes in the bucket. So I'm using
Wow.
like according to that's like charged with some kind of energy, like that's the best water you can use. But after that, you would use like either distilled water or spring water. So you
Yeah.
put some water in the bottom and you put the herbs on top and you put the lid on, and then the steam comes up and it goes through a coil, and you just keep feeding ice into the bucket with
Mhm.
the coil, and that cools the steam down, and so the water comes through the plant and it carries the essential oils and the different stuff of the plant with it, and then you get basically, it's called hydrosol, it's flower
Mhm.
water
Yeah.
on the back end, you know. And I use it for all kind of stuff, like, my skin, um and various things, and it's like, um it's fairly easy to keep too if you just mix it with a little bit of alcohol or something, or if
Mhm.
you put it in the refrigerator or something like that. So, you know, that's the other thing, like when you start down this road, it's like be aware, like there's it's its own rabbit hole,
Yeah,
but
you're gonna be saving all your jars and bottles.
oh my God, that's the other thing. I'm, like,
You're gonna
I'm
have
big.
bottle trade with friends, you're gonna find bottles all the time, you're gonna, like, have so many bottles soaking in your sink to get the labels
Yes.
off to put new
Oh,
ones.
dude, I've
So,
got two bottles soaking in my sink right now, that I dug them out of the woods just the other day. I was taking
oh,
the,
yeah,
yes, yeah. And I was like, dude, mason jars. Get me
yeah.
out.
Yeah, I found 2 ya where I live on a road called Brickyard Road, and the soil is very red clay, lots of iron in the soil.
Wow.
And so it's preserved a lot, and the families that lived in my place before I did, they just is what you did, you just threw your trash in the
Chuck it.
backyard and
Yeah.
just covered it. And so much of that has been, like, cleaning up just, like, the plastic and the tires and the burn barrels and
I
all that.
know the drill. Every
Yeah,
week I
but
get a big chunk of it and stick it on the thing for the guy to take it away. Yeah.
yeah, but I find lots of cool old bottles because
Right.
they
Yeah.
threw all their trash out, you know?
Yep. I've
Um,
even found like those dark blue, those ones that are really beautiful. They're like the indigo blue. There's a certain the cobalt blue.
oh, yeah? I
Oh
haven't
man,
I just found
dude.
that the brown ones and clear ones,
Yeah, those
just old
I
medicine
found
bottles.
one of those cobalt blue and I was like,
That's
"Oh
awesome.
yeah, I'm definitely keeping something special going in there."
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know how we got on that topic, but,
Well, that this will take you places.
right, yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
take you places.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
journey, and that's the whole point.
mhm,
Yeah, but you're a participant in the journey. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go.
yeah,
And like I said, even just the simple act of like, okay, I'm going to pay attention to that these plants are around me, and I'm going to notice their life cycle over the year, and I'm going to stay in touch with that. I mean, that's something that you can do, you know, every year, and every year it'll be a little bit different. Certain years, it's like I said, my cherry trees, like the first year is like unremarkable.
yeah,
You're just like, so there's something about this year that's
mm,
like a banner cherry year. And
yeah,
so how else is that going to show up in your life? What is that symbolic of,
mhm,
What is that burst of like vibrant pink, you know? Where's that in your consciousness,
mhm. Well,
Um
and that brings in, like, plant medicine herbalism is kind of its own standalone thing outside of it's adjacent to, but it's outside of flower essence medicine. So flower
mm,
essences are, it's that's kind of an easy one for people to wrap their minds around because it's the energetics of the plant working on a spiritual level with your own spiritual shroud around you, and
mhm.
it's medicine that you create by you just go out, like, I love making violet flower essence. You pick the violets. You can make violet vinegar that turns as, like, vivid purple or vivid blue depending on what you add to
Oh
it.
yeah, infusing
Violets,
vinegar, just like
yeah,
infusing honey, like I was talking about with lemon balm.
yeah.
Yeah.
You can make candied violets. You can make violet flower essence, and that with any flower, you take the flower head and you put it in a shallow bowl of water and you let it absorbed during the sun, and you're sitting with it and you're meditating with it and you're getting lots of information.
Mm,
And you strain the flowers and you keep that water safe, and you're only making a very small bit of it.
right.
And you can anoint yourself with it as protection. I mean, flower protection is huge.
Mm,
Or you can ingest like one drop of it, but it's a micro dose of
right.
spiritual protection using flower essences. And
Wow.
Dr. Bach in England kind of wrote it down. He was one of the first ones to like write it down.
Yeah.
He had 38 flowers that he had that relationship with. But there's a herbalist called Rosita Arvigo, and she's a, a Mayan herbalist, and she has this idea, this book, and this idea of spiritual bathing, and it's similar to like flower essences, except you're in the water with it. So like if you need that protection, you would take a bath with all the flowers that are growing around your house, and
Wow.
you bathe in the water, and when you get out, you don't dry off, you let that water seal on you as like that armor, that flower
Wow.
armor.
Oh
But
my
it's like
goodness.
that's an easy way for people just to engage with the plant,
Uh-huh.
because when you're sitting with the plant while its medicine is being made,
So you're
even
almost like bathing in a flower tea or something.
totally,
Yeah.
totally, yeah, and just
Wow.
the flowers, nothing else, just the flowers, and like they're ready to help. They're ready. It's like the planets like for you to talk to them. The plants love for you to talk to them. They want to talk back to you. They want
Mm,
to have that conversation. And
wow.
if there is an element of like, I don't know where to start, but I want to have some sort of engagement, like I'm a flower fan anyway. Like I would just start with the flowers.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And this time of year, it's so incredible for that because there's just
Mhm.
like, and it's amazing to me, like to watch, I'm just in awe of nature. Like every 2 or 3 weeks, I think it's a little more than a decan type of thing, but it's like, you'll get a new kind of flower that's coming out,
Mm-hmm.
and so, and like right now, there's a lot of the ones that, or well, up to now, you get these species that their entire life cycle is they get this head start before the trees leaf out, where
Yeah,
all the sunlight is available, and they pop up, they flower, and they go to seed like all within like that first month before the
yeah.
tree manage to get. There's like trillium and now trillium are protected, so if you were going to make a trillium essence, you would
I would
actually
just sit
just
with it. Yeah.
you would just sit with it and you would like put the bowl beside it or something.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to pick those. But
Like crocus and the daffodils and
I
the
sat with
bluebells.
Trillium, and it's like a really, really and I was like getting down on the ground like lower than the Trillium and like taking photographs of them.
Mm-hmm.
That was such an incredible experience. That was during the pandemic. And it's called birthwort. Like it
Oh,
was used, yeah,
wow.
it was
Yeah.
used by birthing women to like open some kind of it has some connection with birthing,
Huh.
and there
Like
these
it helps the cervix open,
I
maybe.
I don't claim to have any more knowledge than that. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
such like
I
that's
mean
not
that
my
in birth, it's good to have that sense of relaxing and opening so that you can ease into the world.
right,
Yeah.
right. So and that brings up this whole idea of like loosening of the bonds.
Mm-hmm.
Kristen Mathis was writing on her Substack recently, like about this idea of loosening of the bonds, and like that there was literally like the women would loosen their girdle, and then they had a certain kind of chair that they sat on or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what the point I was making is like when you're standing up as a human that's like, I don't know, 5, 6 times the size of this plant,
Mm-hmm.
it looks one way, but when you get down on the ground and you're looking at it, it looks like an angel. It's
Yeah.
so beautiful. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could see why that would help with birthing, like just because of it really had like this angelic
Hmm.
sort of feeling and presence to me. Like the leaves were like spread out kind of like wings, and then the flower was like the head.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah.
I've done that with my birth flower is lily of the valley, and I love
Mm,
lily of the valley. And I usually get on my hands and knees to smell it because it smells so good.
yeah.
But yeah, just I have some that are, and I have a little brick patio, and so it's up like 3 bricks, so it's like a raised bed, but still pretty low. and I have a lot of pink lily of the valley,
Wow.
white lily of the valley, and I was able to get below them to take pictures of them to see from the bells from the underside.
Dude, yes, that's what
Yeah,
I'm talking about.
yeah,
Exactly. Same idea. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And that perspective of just being down amongst them, it's like
It
a whole
literally
nother
made me cry when I did it.
yes. Yes. That's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. Yes. It's so beautiful. And it's that change in perspective. I mean, I was talking to one of my students yesterday, and he was trying to grok like astronomically. He's like, why can't I make my head, why can't I bring together these two? Like he was talking about the difference between the sidereal and the tropical
Oh,
view
yeah. Mhm.
of like what you see in the sky versus what you see in the chart. And I was like, it's because they're radically different points of view, dude.
Mm.
And I was trying to impress upon him like how like you're viewing from the horizon, you can only see half of the zodiac at any given time. You see the
Mhm.
half of the ecliptic that's above the equator.
Yeah.
You can't see the other half. And it was like the only way you could see the whole zodiac is if you're like on Mount Olympus
Mm.
looking down on the zodiac. I was like, it's a radically different point of view. And I was like, look at the difference of that humanity, the different path that humanity took when we adopted that point of view.
Mhm.
It's radically different.
Yeah.
And so it's the same kind of thing. Like if you get down on your knees or on your belly, even better, with the plants.
Mhm.
Wow, what a radically different point of view. And it can literally change your consciousness. It can have that is a medicine, in other
Yeah.
words.
Yeah.
Changing your point of view that's ceremonial magic, actually.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
you don't even necessarily realize it, but getting down on your knees to be with the lily of the valleys, that's a ceremony, right?
Mhm.
It
Well, I
totally
grow
is.
her all around. I have like a I have this tree that I've been weaving the saplings around, so it's kind of becoming this arch that I have this beautiful Mary in, and then all
Ooh,
I've got bloodroot and golden seal and lily of the
wow.
valley and wild ginger like all right there around.
Holy
So
smoke.
it's a total Venus, um, you
Wow.
know, sacred. It's like a little very like Mary grotto,
Wow.
but
Intense.
even just to say for people that don't have or don't feel like they have access to that, I mean, just taking your shoes off and walking on grass, like there's like the thing of like go touch grass. It's like it really is like just that. I walk barefoot around my house all the time, and it's dangerous because I've got copperheads. But for me, it's like it's important for my soul to be on the ground, and I have the luxury from my choices to have green all around me.
Yeah.
And so I'm barefoot around my yard a lot. Like it's my relationship with my yard and my relationship with these plants. And you get things from it, from the spirit and energetics of the soil. And then also just the bacteria of the soil is helpful for me to be kind of bacteria grow in a culture and I'm
Dude,
a
when
part of
I
that
when
culture.
I get
You know?
radishes out of my garden, when I'm picking radishes out of my garden, I don't even rinse
Brush
them
them off.
off. I just brush them off.
Yeah.
A little bit of dirt. I mean, it never killed nobody,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's like getting the dirt under your nails,
Yeah.
like so it's like a dose of the bacteria and the medicine that is your soil.
Yep.
That's why it's important not to use Roundup and things like that because
Oh,
that's what you're absorbing. It's
yeah.
important to compost because you're again, it's this reciprocity cycle that you're engaging
Mm.
in.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the compost. I'm gonna be in Brevard in May at Gaia Herbs talking
Oh,
about
cool.
yeah, talking about biodynamic
Hmm.
agriculture and composting is so key because it's alchemy, you know? Like
Yeah.
if you think about it, it's like basically what you're doing is you're taking plant material and you're turning it into dirt.
Hmm.
And then you're taking dirt and turning it into plants.
Yeah.
That's what gardening is.
Yeah.
That's what alchemy is. You're transforming one thing into another thing, and then that thing. And think about it: above, below, as
Hmm.
above, so below. The plant matter above the ground turns into dirt, which goes in the ground, and then that below turns into plant matter above the ground.
Yeah.
So
It's
obviously,
reciprocal.
alchemy, man. You
Well,
know?
especially biodynamic because there's it's community built, it's songs and magic, and there's ritual. Um,
Yeah,
my
there's big
sister,
time
my
ritual. I
sister
mean, they
learned,
literally. Sorry,
Do
go
you
ahead.
know Hugh Courtney? He
Oh
was in,
yeah. I
yeah. So
knew I
my
knew
sister learned from him. So she
wow.
does biodynamic preparation here. And it's like, stuffing what yarrow and
Skulls.
chamomile
Yeah.
and manure into a horn and burying it and singing as you're burying it. I mean, that is ritual magic,
Pretty
like
ritual, yeah.
big time.
And don't think a lot of people like one of the guys that I'm going to be there t speaking with, Stuart Lundy. He's got a biodynamic farm over on the eastern shore of Virginia. I mean, he helped me see that like Steiner, of course, Steiner was educated in alchemy and every like theosophy is obviously like very well and broadly informed,
Yeah.
you know. And so Stuart was like, yeah, like we make these different preparations from the plants because basically, I mean, these are my words, but when I saw him saying, yeah, you've got this plant corresponds to this planet, and then I started seeing the way it was organized, I was like, holy crap, that's the tree of life. Like
Mm,
literally what you're doing, there's like 7 preparations that you put in the compost pile, and each preparation is a planet. So you're
mm-hmm.
literally taking the planets and putting them in your compost pile so that the full consciousness, the full array of consciousness is in the compost pile and the full array of energetics. And so all of the various energy and what it does is like the we're going to be harvesting valerian at Gaia when
Mm,
we're there. We're going to be harvesting valerian flower, and it's supposed to open up the phosphorus pathways.
mm,
So the consciousness that is valerian helps to open up the phosphorus pathways that make and it essentially makes the phosphorus more bioavailable,
yeah.
more absorbable to the plants, and so yeah, it's this conscious dialogue with a compost pile. So essentially what we're saying is you're instead of a pile of dirt, you're making a pile of conscious dirt.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You're making a pile of holistic dirt, and that consciousness that you are the medium for,
Mm,
right? That's the thing, like we were made in the image of a creator, of a creative being, whatever you want to call that, however
yeah.
you want to envision that. I'm not going to put a name on it because then it's more broad for people, but we were made in the image of a creative being. And so we have the ability to be creative in the same way. And literally, when you participate in biodynamic agriculture, you're literally recreating your compost pile as a microcosm of the original creation of our system with
Mm-hmm.
all the planets, everything's in there. It's a microcosm of the solar system, dude. I
Yeah.
mean, that alone, I just want to sing that to people.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah. It's
incredible.
funny that like so my father-in-law passed away 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. They lived out
Sorry.
in Sebastopol, California, Northern California, and
Wine
his
country.
his compost pile was like they called it like his church. He was a doctor of Chinese medicine. He was an acupuncturist. He was a
Mm,
big Gurdjieff guy. Like they was a part of the Gurdjieff Society.
wow.
His compost was like that was where he spent his time. He loved compost. And when we would take our son out there, it was his only grandchild, he would sit Leon in the compost pile and they would just dig in the dirt together. Like that was kind of their thing. And when
There's all
he,
kinds of little beings in there, little
yeah, the
bacteria and
worms,
fungi.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yes.
But when he passed away, he passed away at home, and the ambulance was coming to take his body away. But then his wife went to the compost pile and got a little dirt, and then went and anointed his head with it before he
Oh my
left.
God. Wow.
Is and it wasn't anything that anybody told her to do. It was like the compost was a part of him as much as he was a part of our lives. Like the compost
Wow.
wanted to say goodbye too. And it's like that life force is held in so many ways.
I've
And that,
heard,
you
yeah.
know,
I've heard people say that with bees too. Like,
mm,
if when there's a death in the family, somebody has to go and tell the bees so that the
yeah,
bees won't leave because
yeah,
there's like this connection, this etheric or spiritual, however you want to envision it, there's this connection. And when the person passes, that connection. Like the bees might think, oh, we don't belong here anymore or something. I
Yeah.
don't know what bees think, but there's some, like the bees can leave. And so
Yeah.
there's this practice of somebody going and telling, and think about how healing that is. Like, you get to speak to somebody who's not going to interrupt you,
Hmm.
who's going to
Yeah.
listen. They're not going to tell you you're stupid for thinking this, that, or the other. They're just, and so it's just like a good thing to do anyways, but it's also like this idea of like that we are participating in the web of life,
Hmm.
you know, and
Yeah.
that's just really beautiful. And
I love that poetry of like someone has to go tell the bees because like they're as
someone
much a
has to
part
go
of us.
tell the compost pile
Yeah.
that the master is going back to the stars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, when we took some of his ashes when we visited the next time, we put some of the compost into the ash pile. It's like it just felt like, yeah, it's just like the as above, so below. That so below is the dirt.
Yes,
It's
yes, it is.
it's what we can't see. It's the other side of the zodiac that we
Yeah.
can't see.
That's what I love about, the symbols for the elements. And the symbol for earth is a downward pointing triangle, and water too. And it's like all of the cool stuff about earth, like on the surface, it looks kind of boring and flat, right? And so,
Yeah,
and it's kind of similar with earth people, like they're kind of quiet and shy. They're not really, in your face. And so you think, oh, they're just, and so you
not much
kind of
going
think
on.
of them as like, but earth people, to like to a T, they are usually extremely multi-talented,
Mm,
because when you dig down into earth, what do you find? You find all the different minerals, all the different strata. Like
hmm.
earth is really multifaceted. That's my sort of discovery with earth, is that, it seems kind of simple and uniform on the surface, but when you
Hmm.
start digging down, there's so much going on under there. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
You've got the mycelium connecting the roots of the plants, and you've got the different minerals. And so, yeah, there, that below, we can take it for granted that it's just like,
hmm,
oh yeah, it's this sort of what do they say, like it's this monolith, right?
yeah,
It's totally
yeah.
not. Like if you get down there, it's you're gonna it's a whole nother world.
Yeah, and like in a way, like when I study tarot and I read about, when cards come up, like today I pulled the card for this conversation was the Three of Coins, which I love.
Interesting.
It's the middle decan of Capricorn.
Yep.
I love that card, and but then
You have
especially
the
with the Virgo cards, because Virgo, I think of all of the Earth signs, kind of gets the shaft a lot. We talked about Aries always getting like pigeonholed into one idea, and like
yes.
Scorpio, Gemini get kind of called like the crazies for various reasons. Virgo, Virgo
For
itself,
various reasons that we're not going to go into.
right? But Virgo, I mean, there's
They're
plenty.
just the fussy, clean freaks.
Right. Yeah, they must be all like anal retentive and all this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like when I look at the 10 of coins, the 10 of pentacles,
Oh my God, dude.
it's like the most magical card, in my opinion, of the entire deck.
Absolutely.
Major and minor arcana. 10 of coins is like, because
Have
where
you
do
ever
you
seen the
go?
Ten of Coins in the Alchemical Tarot?
I don't think so. No.
He's got like this bearded guy, and the coins are like in his eyes and in his hair and in his beard. It's like really wild looking. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like the when you look at Earth and it seems flat and it seems stable and unchanging and so therefore boring, and you don't realize the slowness of like permanent magical change,
Yes. Yeah.
permanent, like the perma meant
Mm-hmm.
being like that real incarnate experiential magic that we can participate in. Is
Yes.
when you see that, you think one thing, but then when you start to dig into the layers and realize how much systemic magical change that it actually affects, it's not this fiery passionate magic from a fire sign, or this like idea cloud that keeps whipping around, or this like sultry cancerian pool that like convinces us under like intoxication. Like earth magic is
Mm.
very, very, very magical. It's very dense, and it's the doorway from which we can then go into other magical realms.
Yes.
By using plants, which is of the earth, you can enter into the doorway of a Mercury tincture and then go into the air world. I mean,
Mhm.
by using sage and Palo Santo with fire, you're creating that to enter into other realms through a
Yeah.
fire doorway.
Yeah, I
So
was going to mention that too. Like I've got a sage plant on my, I actually have like Simon and Garfunkel. I've got parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme all in
yeah,
one little
yeah,
bucket. But I've got some sage from my patio, like
yeah,
on my altar with my Jupiter talisman, because
yeah,
yeah, because like, they say that the sage sticks and whatever that you get at the store, like that's not
mhm,
really sustainable.
yeah,
If you
yeah,
grow a little plant of sage in your patio, you
yeah.
know, it's right there.
And the cool thing, especially about white sage, is that a way to get it to germinate better is to use fire stratification. Have you ever heard of that? Where
Mm-mm.
you kind of flash burn them, the seedlings on sand to kind of invite them because like they're a fire plant.
Oh, right,
And to
right,
do
right.
fire stratification, I mean, it's a whole process to do it, but it mimics wildfires
Hmm.
out
Hmm.
west. It's like that
They'll
activates some
just,
of those plants to come up.
yeah,
They're not
wow.
going to come up with water and sunlight. They're going to come out with fire. So,
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
just thinking about the energetics of like
Yes,
white sage being related to that, like that's spirit.
right.
That's daimon. Like that's
Hmm.
a different type of magic than earth magic, but
Hmm.
the earth magic I feel like is like a doorway that we can go through, and
Yes.
to not marginalize earth signs as or earth placements, which I have most of. Like
Yes,
I'm
you do. My
mostly
goodness,
earth,
woman, you are.
like
You
the
are.
capacity for magic is like if I'm an ambassador for it, like you you know um just come listen to me about any sort of subject about all of my earth placements, like there are fucking doorways all over the place.
Yes. Yeah. I think Earth like you were talking about how the signs get bad raps. I think Earth is kind of like the one that is the least uh, appreciated.
Mm,
I feel like Earth just doesn't get enough appreciation because, like you said, like, water can be like sultry and sort of magnetic like that, and air, we spend so much time in air consciousness, and
mhm.
fire, of course, is like, flashy and,
Yeah.
and whatever, but like Earth is it's the foundation, right? It's
Mhm.
the densest of, and so it's the foundation of everything. And yeah, I even wrote one time, I wrote like a prayer of appreciation for the earth
Mm,
element. I think I've read it a few times on the podcast, and I feel like that's another thing, like in your grimoire, like even if it's nothing you ever publish, like just being grateful and being
yeah.
appreciative, like even if it's never, even if you think it sucks and you would never publish it or even show it to anybody,
Mhm.
doing that, writing down your words of appreciation, and that's really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
It's really powerful stuff because in the process of writing that, it forced me to like crystallize all of the things that I had not. I realized that I hadn't wasn't really fully appreciating the earth element for
Mm,
how diverse it was and how profound it was and everything, and that like the process of writing that prayer of thankfulness for the earth element really opened my eyes in a big way, like holy smokes, there's a lot of power here.
Well,
So
sometimes when you say something out loud in a conversation, as you're speaking it, you're realizing it, you're trying to tell yourself that, like you
yes.
don't realize that in the moment. But that's so much for in a grimoire is like when you're writing it down, you're writing it down for you. And my intention with my grimoire is that I'm never going to publish this thing, but it will be the holder of these mysteries that I can take pieces of and share those threads. But the
Sure.
whole in itself, like that's sacred to like I don't often even like go through it and read it. I just place it down there
Mm-hmm.
because like I'm not there to make it perfect and palatable for other people. If
Mm.
I'm there to kind of plant that seed again, like that new moon, and then I'll nurture it because that's the thing. It's like don't just plant a seed and then expect harvest in
Right.
6 months. You plant the seed, and then if you tend to that plant, then in 6 months, maybe you can start to harvest some of
Right.
those blessings.
There's a lot of weeding, a lot of watering, a lot of praying, a lot of,
Yeah,
it's like having a baby. It's like having a pet, a pet. It's like with my
yeah,
kid cat, I'm constantly like, you know, trying to figure out if he needs something or,
yeah.
waking me up in the middle of the night because he wants to go for a walk and all
Hmm.
that. Like, yeah,
I saw
it's,
this time lapse of a seed under the soil recently,
mm,
and it was, you could tell like that the surface was just still, and underneath it was like it was going through all of these transformations. It was shedding its original skin, and it was growing this white flesh, and then it was branching out, and then it was coming out of the soil. And so by the time you see it come out of the soil, you think it's new, but it has been working really, really hard.
yep,
It's like the butterfly, the caterpillars that have to kind of spin around themselves and break out of themselves to become a butterfly. I mean, that is incredibly brave and a lot of work. Like,
yep,
and to see it, for us to see it on like when the flashy showy end, it's like to recognize how much work it got to
yes,
get to that point. And
yes,
similar to us humans, the work that we're doing, the concepts that you're trying to grasp or the
mhm,
magic you're trying to integrate, as long as you're tending to it, even if you don't see evidence on the surface, just the intention and the thought and the sitting with it and the reading about it and the talking about it, that is that seed under the soil growth that eventually will bloom if
yeah,
you keep tending to it.
yep, beautiful. I love it. I love the mysteries of the earth. I'm really happy we went there. That's like
Yeah.
so, yeah, so perfect for this, cross quarter point in earth because each of the cross quarter points, of course, will activate one of the elements.
Hmm.
And this one is the earth element. So
Yeah.
it's beautiful, beautiful. So people can find you, your practical astros on the
Yep.
internet.
Yep.
Anything else you want to tell about people, something you have going on that they should look out for?
I'm part of the astrologers co-op, so
Right.
I'm actually writing about the two of coins later on in the year for the solstice,
Awesome.
which I'm excited about. I love all the Capricorn decans.
Hmm.
They're some of my personal favorites.
Cool. That's a
And
Jupiter ruled deccan in the Chaldean, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So I'm doing that, but that getting associated with that co-op inspired me to write about all the decans, and so that's what you and
Ooh.
I did. So we talked about Aries, but then I did kind of long form writing about all the Aries decans.
Wow.
So
So after the podcast, you went back and did some writing about that too.
well, I did it beforehand because it was
Oh,
like
I see.
that I wanted to write about all of them, and I didn't want to go and read about all of them. I wanted to kind of honor some transmission. I want to be like, what does this decan mean to me? I knew enough about it to hold the space, but a lot
Mm,
of it is just like my stories that come through when I write about them. So that's my project for the year, is
wow.
writing about the decans, and then the YouTube of talking about them was kind of secondary. It was kind of like I should talk to other people about it too, and that just came. So they're kind of going hand in hand.
Ah,
I did a Taurus one, and then I'm doing Gemini next. So I'm
yeah.
just kind of doing them within the season. So on
So
my YouTube and Substack, I write about it, and then I talk to other
right
astrologers
on.
about
So
it.
you've
Yeah.
already published the Taurus decans on the Substack or?
No, I'm in the middle of Taurus 3. It's like
Okay.
Taurus just takes her time.
All right, cool.
And I had kind of as I'm sure lots of people did, a very full April. It was pretty
Oh
wild.
my God, dude, April was intense,
I
man.
knew it would be, and we all
Wow.
knew it would be, but it was like I was
I
surprised
usually don't
myself.
I usually don't comment on all that drama. I mean, the astrologers are constantly dramatizing every single transit, it seems like to me.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really usually take part in that, but man,
There
wow.
was a lot.
It was so high. And then,
Well, so I'll tell you, the Jupiter Uranus conjunction was at 2149 Taurus, which
yeah.
is my Mercury
Mm,
to the exact minute. So it happened
whoa,
right on my Mercury.
whoa.
It was after that that it was such like a moment that
Hmm.
after that, like it has taken me however long,
To just
like
recover.
to just recover. Like I really just like
Yeah.
fell flat. I needed to be flat. I was real quiet. It was
That
real
was the
still.
same experience I had. I was so high and so full of energy, and then all of a sudden it was like as high as I was, I found the low correlate to that bad
Yeah.
boy.
And
Yeah.
I was fine being there.
Sure.
I was like,
I wasn't depressed
yeah,
necessarily, but it was definitely like very low energy, very,
yeah.
I mean, I guess I did spend a little time, but the depression didn't stick. That wasn't the part that stuck with me. The part
Mm,
that stuck with me, I think, from that was like, um just like for me it was like really understanding, okay, like yeah, you cannot have the high without the low. Like
mhm.
you're not gonna get this, you're not gonna get to stay up there like permanently, right? It's
Yeah,
unsustainable. So you're coming down here and you're just gonna spend some time to balance that.
yeah, yeah.
And
It
so
was like it was less recovery and more just stillness, you know, like I didn't have depression or like low spirits. I was like,
yeah,
I don't really feel like talking to people or
right,
doing this. I was glad I didn't have many clients. So I was like
right.
really able to just be still and be in reserve
That's
and
such a beautiful place to be, man.
yeah, I mean,
Stillness and
it was such a
silence.
foil. I feel like it was a lot of just like it was recovery from how like the crescendo of the first 3 weeks of
Almost manic.
October.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yep, yep.
Um, so yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing is
Cool. So
doing
check
my
out,
astrology stuff, but the decans is really
yeah, check out Krista's YouTube and Substack for sure. And also X, Twitter, Instagram. What
Mhm.
else?
That's
All
most of it. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
cool.
I
Awesome.
I stick to Twitter and Instagram for the most part,
All
and then
right.
you know.
Awesome. Well, thank you, lady. Earth
Yeah, thank you
lady,
so much.
Earth priestess. Thank you so much for coming out here and joining us. It's been fun. I
Sure.
hope we get to do some more.
Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah.
All
And
right.
let me know when you're down in Brevard. So maybe if I'm in town, I'll
Okay.
come down to Gaia. I've been there a bunch of times.
Right on. Yeah, it'd be fun. It's such an incredible place. I mean, they've got like this huge field of echinacea. It's just like purple to the horizon. It's like,
Yeah,
oh my God.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. See you around the bend.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.